No more being fooled by AI. No more leaving your students without information, because we are opening enrollment for the Brazil in World War II course at the SDG Academy. Live classes starting on May 26th. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to learn more and enroll. Look, it's been a month since I've been enjoying a truly wonderful experience after a discovery I made completely by chance, really, completely by chance. That the Medal of Honor, the original Medal of Honor, the first game in the series, not the later entries everyone knows today, right? The more modern games in the series, not the very first one. Except for people my age, over 40, who experienced that back then, right? From youth like I did back in 1999. And man, the original Medal of Honor was remastered. It was remade. And do you want to know what's even more curious about all this? What's more curious? It wasn't remade by the studio. It wasn't remade by the creators. It was made by a fan. It was made by a game enthusiast, a guy passionate about the World War II theme, just like I am. And a guy who's passionate about the game, man, just like I am. In other words, he put everything that mattered most to him into it. Everything he was most excited about with that title. And he made it available to everyone for free. I'll leave the link here in the description for you to play, to have the experience of playing the new, well, not new, the old Medal of Honor remastered. But for you who are younger, maybe you don't know what Medal of Honor is, man, and what the importance of this game is. Here's what you need to know. Today you have Call of Duty. Today you have Hell Let Loose. Today you have all these games, all these game series. FPS games, right? First-person shooter. First-person shooting games. From World War II, right? Historical games. Now there are games from World War I, other conflicts, and Vietnam too. But all of this can have its origins traced back to Medal of Honor from 1999. Why am I saying this? Because I remember those few FPS games that came out before that very well. I remember Doom, I remember Mage, I remember Wolfenstein, okay? And of course I remember GoldenEye. All these games were either heavily based on fantasy, like Doom, or they were based on stories that weren't exactly focused on history, right? Like GoldenEye. GoldenEye is a reinterpretation of the movie GoldenEye for you to play. And it was fantastic, okay? It was fantastic. The Nintendo 64 at its peak. But Medal of Honor, it brought the whole formula, right? The full FPS experience to World War II. Which is something that a lot of people at the time didn't believe would be commercially viable. Because audiences liked fantasy more. Audiences wanted more laser guns, monsters on the screen, like Doom, for example, right? That's how it was. But if it weren't for that guy's persistence, we wouldn't have this all-time classic today. And maybe, right, all this legacy he left behind. Who is this guy? Steven Spielberg. Right, the same guy who has already directed so many classic movies. I've even reviewed them here, right, in the War Room. And Steven Spielberg, man, besides being a super talented filmmaker, he's a huge, huge World War II enthusiast. Steven Spielberg is without a doubt a huge World War II enthusiast. He was already making his little movies, right, on Super 8 film back then. He made his little movies in his backyard with friends and cousins. I'm not sure who else. They were already little World War II movies, inspired by World War II newsreels. And when you see Spielberg at first, right, building his film career, and he goes on to make friends with other filmmakers, among them, George Lucas. He's another guy, the same age as him, also obsessed, right? Totally a total World War II enthusiast. Spielberg is going to give tips to George Lucas about how to build the visuals of Star Wars, right? Of Star Wars, adding different things, encouraging the guy. No, put this here because it's similar to the aerial combat from World War II. Man, Star Wars today looks a lot like World War II, also because of Spielberg's collaboration. And it comes from George Lucas, Spielberg's great work on World War II. I know a lot of people will say it's Saving Private Ryan or Schindler's List. Not for me. For me, it's the trilogy of Indiana Jones. It's Spielberg's World War II classic because that's what really fascinated me when I was a kid. That was it. It had that action vibe, that sense of adventure. Exciting. That I experienced on the screen when I was a kid, and that I got to relive, man, when I was maybe around 17, 18 years old. Not 18 years old. Yeah, around that, okay? 17, 18 years old when I played Medal of Honor. It was like being dropped into an Indiana Jones movie, mixed with Saving Private Ryan. And it was exactly, man, during that experience in that window of time that Spielberg created Medal of Honor. Why? Because he was finishing the production of Saving Private Ryan back in 1997. He said, damn, but this would be a great idea for a game because my son is always glued to his Nintendo playing GoldenEye. What if we made a World War II GoldenEye? Just imagine. So Spielberg had already created a company called DreamWorks Interactive. It was kind of a video game division of DreamWorks, which was his production company, right? He created this production company, this interactive games division, right? Mostly because of examples from other production companies. They did the same and were making a lot of profit. And when he presented this story, right, this idea of making a World War II FPS game, a lot of people didn't believe in him. Yeah, the company's managers didn't believe in him, saying exactly what I mentioned. The audience wants fantasy games. They want lasers, cannons, dragons, monsters, aliens, that kind of stuff. And Spielberg said, no, man, hold on. No, I think this can work. We can explore this, yes. We can set this game in the 1940s, create a really immersive environment. We can do it, yes. No, guys, it's okay, Spielberg. Since you're so established an Oscar winner, let's give your idea a vote of confidence. Let's make a prototype. They made the prototype, man. The prototype was a disaster. The prototype came out all messed up, you know? The weapons weren't realistic. The missions weren't realistic. The characters were just thrown on the screen any old way. And what do I always complain about here, right? The believability factor. For those who like the subject of World War II, for those who are into it, it's really important. And it's no wonder that Medal of Honor is the classic it is today, precisely because it appeals to those who like the subject. Not just gamers, but people who really like the subject. Do you know what Spielberg did? Spielberg brought in a guy I've already mentioned here on the channel, someone you know by now, Dale Dye, to be the game's historical consultant. Why? Because he had worked with Dale Dye months before during the production of Saving Private Ryan, and Dale Dye managed to bring realism to the movie that he wouldn't have been able to achieve without him, right? So he brought in Dale Dye. Dale Dye. He analyzed the game prototype and said, this is garbage. This is worthless. But it can be saved because I'm going to save it. So the one who saved the game was Captain Dale Dye, right? What did he do for the game? He brought authenticity to the game. He changed, the format, the weapon animations. He guided the animators on how to animate the weapons. He demanded that the sound effects be as realistic as possible. Have you noticed? If you've played Medal of Honor, you remember what it feels like to pick up that machine gun. That MG? Isn't it? Do you remember the feeling of playing with the Garand? Or of playing, for example, with the bar rifle? How does all of that seem so real? Are the sounds of the weapons real? So that's thanks to Dale Dye's consulting on the game, right? And Spielberg, he didn't just create a shooting game for the guy to go in and shoot up the Germans. No, he created an atmosphere. He created a movie-like narrative, for example, like Indiana Jones, man. Like Indiana Jones infiltrating. Because you'll remember Indiana Jones in the last one, right? The Holy Grail. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I was about to say Goblet of Fire because of Harry Potter, but it's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You guys will remember there's a part where he dresses in a German uniform and goes undercover there, right, at the book burning ceremony, holding a book, which is the diary, to find the Grail, right, the Holy Grail. At this point in the game, you have a similar scene where you enter Germany, you go into areas occupied by the Wehrmacht and present a fake document there. And you show it to the guy and he reads it. Many times he reads it and lets you pass. In other words, it's not just about shooting. You also have to use stealth in the game. That didn't exist before. In GoldenEye, for example, you don't have that. GoldenEye is action from start to finish. GoldenEye involves shooting throughout every stage. And now we have a complete historical immersion, right? One of the missions I like the most in this game, without a doubt, is the submarine mission, right? To sink the new submarine there, you go undercover as a crew member, an officer of a German warship. That creates a tension for you that you wouldn't have if your objective was just to shoot and kill everyone. So that contributed a lot to the game becoming a classic, right? So another thing we can never forget to mention is the fantastic, I would even say fundamental work of Michael Giacchino. Man, Michael Giacchino is a musician, a conductor. He's the guy who composed the game's soundtrack. And the game's soundtrack, if you take the Indiana Jones soundtrack and play them side by side, you'll see they're very similar. Really, they're very similar. The tone, the excitement, the atmosphere of the soundtrack. It's what drives you forward, man. That soundtrack, you can actually pull up YouTube, Deezer, or Spotify and listen to it in your car. You're going to have fun, no doubt about it. The soundtrack is fantastic. For those who remember playing it, or for those who are still playing this game, the soundtrack is unforgettable. Hey man, there was a problem, right? Right when the game was about to be released. Just months before the release in the United States, the Columbine massacre happened. For those who have read about it or remember seeing it on TV, it was a horrible event. 2 guys entered the school and killed several students. And that was kind of a turning point, right? For the issue of the representation of guns and violence in entertainment. And at that time, it really affected video games. And Spielberg had an established career, right? Already as a filmmaker. Kid-friendly, right? For the family, really, like, he couldn't be associated with anything that was too far outside that family-friendly image. So he got scared of that, right? Of an extremely violent first-person game being associated with his name. What did Spielberg do? Spielberg ordered the gore to be cut from the game. So even though you actually massacre German soldiers in the game, there's no blood in the game. And there's no gore in the game in the sense of amputations, for example. There's nothing like that in the game. But in the prototypes, there was. There were amputations and there was blood. So that was cut from the original game. The game became much cleaner, right? In the end, it became something more tangible, more palatable, actually, for audiences of all ages, right? And finally, the last obstacle that Spielberg faced was the National Association of Medal of Honor recipients, because the game was called Medal of Honor, and Captain Paul Bucha, who was a Vietnam veteran and won the Medal of Honor in Vietnam in March 1968, he was the president of the association. So Bucha, he strongly condemned the game because of the frivolous use of such a respectful term, right? To represent a game. So man, Spielberg had to take Captain Bucha to see the game. He put the game in front of him and he showed him how the game worked, and he came away with a different opinion. He was like, whoa, wait a second. This game elevates the term and the meaning, right, of the Medal of Honor. So check this out. The game, before it was even released, impressed the president of the National Association of Medal of Honor recipients, who is also a recipient himself, man. A guy who was in Vietnam right there during the Tet Offensive and earned the highest American decoration for bravery on the battlefield. So when the game was released on October 31, 1999, right on Halloween, it was released for the PlayStation, and it instantly became a classic. It became a classic undeniably. All the game review and ranking platforms, all the game critics gave it very high scores and continue to give very high scores to this game. This game became kind of a must-play for everyone who played PlayStation at the time. For sure, for me, it was extremely memorable. It was one of the games I played the most on PlayStation, you know? I knew by heart how to beat all the levels on the hardest difficulty, you know, to earn the Medal of Honor, because you would get medals based on your performance in the game, right? And the game centers around the character of Lieutenant Jimmy Patterson. You play as a United States Army soldier who completes an extremely successful mission and is then called to work for the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, right? It's the Office of Strategic Services, which is the precursor to the CIA. So at the OSS, there's a colonel named Stanley Hargrove, who's the guy that gives him the missions. So besides all the well-developed and immersive levels, you also have that real intelligence agency atmosphere. Because of the sound design, you know, typewriters, doors opening and closing, people talking and walking around. It's completed by Colonel Hargrove's narration, who shows you films from that era. And man, how much detail there is in that. Those films are impressive, right? There are films there of the Stuka, the Messerschmitt 163, the Comet, the Me 262, the V2, and the submarines. It's impressive how I never forgot those films. That just catapulted my interest in World War II even more, right? And then over time, that started to fade away. New games were being created. But last year, interestingly, I decided to look for that game again to see if I could still enjoy the game, right? And I found an emulator for the game. And the game emulator gives you exactly the same experience you had back then. But back then, TVs weren't widescreen, right? 4:3. They were in the 4:3 format, and the game was in the 4:3 format. And that, of course, limits your experience. It's not on a 16:9 screen, right? You'll have those two black bars on the sides. Besides that, undeniably, the technology left the game behind, right? It's been left in the dust because the graphics are really bad. Yeah, the frame rate is low. The movement of the soldiers, right? It's not very good anymore either. And the weapons themselves, right? The ones in the foreground which stand out the most are also low resolution. So it really ends up looking like an outdated game. And my surprise couldn't have been bigger, man. What was I doing? I think I was on YouTube and I saw a video of someone reviewing this. A new Medal of Honor remake. Whoa, a remake? Let me check this out. And the author of the video explained there that in February this year, 2026, a guy from Poland named Oleksiy Panchenko released for free a remastered version of the original Medal of Honor. I said, wait, let me download this. I quickly found the download there and downloaded it. Man, it's a small file. I believe it will run on any computer. No, don't worry, it will run on your computer. Small file, easy installation. Just click it. It already launches the game just like the PlayStation did back then, but with an immediate advantage, an obvious advantage. There's no loading time. There isn't. It's instant. The game is so light that the loading is instant. If you had a PlayStation 1 like I did, you'll remember that back then there was a loading bar, right? You had to wait there for a few seconds, maybe 10, 15, 20 seconds for things to load. But now everything is instant. You want to know the best of all? It's widescreen. The guy remastered Medal of Honor to widescreen format 16:9. Man, when I saw that, I felt so good. When I saw that, I had an instant smile on my face just like that. And when I moved the weapon from side to side, the FPS was so high. You can move back and forth freely with very fluid movements. And the weapons, the ones that are in the foreground, all the weapons have been remade, man, now with much better details. The lighting, the moonlight, the lights inside the environments. When you walk, for example, through a German facility that has those green or red light panels on the wall, there are a lot of those. You can see the reflections on the weapon. And everything, right? Even the characters' movements are much smoother and better. And now, do you want to know what I think was also a really cool addition? Not an improvement, but an addition to the game? Remember I said that Spielberg took Gory out of the game back in 1999, right? Well, this guy, Panchenko, he reintroduced Gory. So now when you shoot the soldier, there's this blood splash. So Gory came back. Gory showed up and really improved the experience, made it much more realistic. And then I went through the whole game. The levels, the Norway level, for example, right? The heavy water factory that you have to sabotage. The whiteness of the snow looked really, really beautiful on the screen. And the final level, man, Nordhausen, right? The V1 and V2 factory. What fun, man, what fun. Because that level was made for you to have fun. I think the person who designed the game knew that. The worst level is actually the second to last one, right? The one in the mine with the works of art. The last one is for you to have fun, man. You go in shooting and there are a lot of soldiers for you to kill, but you can complete the objectives really easily. It's nothing that stops you and makes you redo the level. No, you just keep going. It's a delight to play. I had a fantastic experience reliving the remastered original Medal of Honor. And I don't know if Alex Panchenko will get to see this video here because there are other reviews out there. But man, congratulations on the fantastic work you did. And I, like everyone else I saw on the platform where it's available, in the link, you'll see the link here in the description to download it. Everyone is commenting, man, make Underground, dude. Do Underground. What is Underground? It's Medal of Honor 2, which was released, if I'm not mistaken, in 2000 or 2001. It came right after the second one was released, which stars Manon Baptiste, who is the French resistance agent that gives guidance, right? Who is the middleman there, the intermediary between Patterson and the OSS. She is the protagonist of the second one, and the second one is an awesome game. Really awesome. So I'm waiting for the remaster of Medal of Honor Underground. All right, so that's what I have to tell you. The game turned out extremely respectful. Of course, it's not in 4K, which would also take away from the experience, but it's completely up to date by today's standards. So it will give you that nostalgia, that immersive, nostalgic experience that I had, and it will definitely give it to you too. But now, tell me, have you ever played Medal of Honor? Did you already know about it? Are you nostalgic about the game like I am? Did you already know about the remastered version? Hey, let us know in the comments, and if you want me to post gameplay of this remastered version on the channel, let us know too. Don't forget that on May 26th, we start our course on Brazil in World War II, the most complete and definitive course on this topic in Portuguese. Be part of the select group in the War Room that will learn this from start to finish and clear up all your questions with me live. Here, look, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to learn more and enroll.